It was supposed to be an ordinary Sunday afternoon in Missouri, but by sunset, a young woman was gone, leaving behind a car that was still running, a door that stood open, and a mystery that would haunt her family for more than a decade. This is the story of Phoenix Coldon, the 23-year-old who vanished in broad daylight, and the secrets that surfaced after she disappeared. Sunday, December 18th, 2011. The Coldon home in Spanish Lake, Missouri, sat quiet under the pale winter sun. The family had just returned from church, the same routine they'd kept for years. Inside, gospel music played softly from the living room, while Goldia Coldon prepared a late lunch. Her daughter, Phoenix, moved through the house in her usual calm rhythm, polite, reserved, beautiful, with those bright eyes that always looked like they were thinking about something else. Phoenix wasn't the type to cause trouble. She'd grown up in a strict, faith-filled home. Church every Sunday, Bible study on Wednesdays, curfew by 10. Her parents, Goldia and Lawrence, believed in discipline, in God, and in keeping their daughter safe from the chaos of the outside world. That afternoon, around 3 p.m., Phoenix slipped on a grey hoodie and jeans. She told her mother she was going out for a bit. No details, no specific plan, just a calm voice, like she'd be back soon. She grabbed her car keys, stepped outside, and drove away in her black 1998 Chevy Blazer. An hour passed, then another. By 5 p.m., Goldia noticed the house had grown too quiet. Phoenix usually called if she was running late. By 6, she wasn't answering her phone. By 7, darkness had settled over Spanish Lake, and something in Goldia's chest began to tighten. She went outside, scanning the empty driveway. No headlights, no sound of an engine approaching. Lawrence checked the nearby streets, thinking maybe Phoenix had stopped by a friend's house or gone for a drive to clear her mind. But deep down, both parents felt something was wrong. Phoenix wasn't the kind of daughter who just disappeared without a word. When midnight came, Goldia stood at the front window, staring at the road. The same road her daughter had driven down just hours earlier. The same road that, by the next morning, would lead them to a mystery darker than anything they'd ever imagined. That same afternoon, only a few miles away, traffic rolled quietly down a narrow road near East St. Louis, a stretch of cracked asphalt lined with abandoned buildings and empty lots. At around 5:30 p.m., a police patrol noticed something odd, a black Chevy Blazer idling in the middle of the road. The driver's door was wide open. The engine was still running. The officer slowed his cruiser, stepped out, and approached the SUV with one hand on his flashlight. No one inside. No movement. He leaned in. The keys were in the ignition, purse on the passenger seat, cell phone in the cup holder. No sign of a struggle. No blood. No broken glass. To the officer, it looked like another abandoned vehicle. East St. Louis had plenty of those. Cars ditched by joyriders or left behind by owners running from something worse. He called for a tow truck. Within minutes, the SUV was hauled away to an impound lot. No report filed under missing person. No follow-up. Just another anonymous car taken off the street. Meanwhile, back in Spanish Lake, Goldia and Lawrence were growing frantic. They stayed up all night, calling hospitals, police departments, and every friend they could think of. But no one had seen Phoenix, and no one knew about the car. 9 days later, 9 long days of fear, sleepless nights, and unanswered prayers, Lawrence walked into the local impound lot after hearing a rumor about a black Chevy. When he saw the vehicle, his knees nearly gave out. It was Phoenix's, the same Blazer she'd driven away in. Inside, everything was just as the officer had described: purse, phone, keys, untouched. The gas tank was nearly empty, meaning it had been running for hours. But there was no sign of Phoenix, no footprints nearby. No fingerprints except hers. A car left running in the middle of nowhere, with every trace of her life still inside. It didn't look like she planned to leave. It looked like she had vanished, mid-breath. When Lawrence and Goldia realized Phoenix's car had been sitting in an impound lot for over a week, something inside them broke. They weren't angry at first, just confused. How could no one tell them their daughter's vehicle had been found? How could police not see the connection? At the station, Lawrence handed the officer a photograph of Phoenix, smiling, eyes full of life, and asked, "How can her car be sitting there for 9 days and no one calls us?" The officer shrugged. "We didn't have a missing persons report at that time." Goldia's voice trembled. "Because we didn't know where to file one. No one would listen." In the days that followed, the Coldons took matters into their own hands. They drove street by street through Spanish Lake, St. Louis, and every small town in between, shouting Phoenix's name out the car window. They posted flyers on gas pumps, telephone poles, church doors. When their printer ran out of ink, neighbors brought more paper. Strangers they'd never met joined the search. Goldia called local hospitals every morning, asking the same question in the same broken tone. "Do you have an unidentified young woman, mid-20s, African-American, about 5'6"? The answer was always no. Meanwhile, police classified the case as a missing adult. To them, it wasn't yet a crime. There was no sign of foul play, no ransom, no proof of abduction. Some detectives quietly suggested Phoenix might have run away, but her parents knew better. Goldia kept saying, "My daughter wouldn't walk away from her car, not with the engine running. She wouldn't walk away from her life." Each night, she sat by the phone, afraid to close her eyes, afraid she might miss the call that could bring Phoenix home. And as the first week passed with no trace of her, the Coldons began to realize something chilling. They were the only ones truly looking for her. As days turned into weeks, detectives began digging into Phoenix's background, her phone records, her bank accounts, her social media. At first, everything looked ordinary. Bible verses on Facebook, photos from church picnics, college textbooks in the back seat of her car. But beneath that polished surface, a different picture started to form. Phoenix had two lives, one that her parents knew, the obedient daughter, homeschooled, devout, always home by curfew, and another that almost no one did. Investigators learned that Phoenix had been living part-time in an apartment across the river in Illinois, a place her parents had never heard of. She'd been paying rent in cash, driving back and forth without telling anyone. Friends from the university said she'd been trying to break free, balancing between independence and guilt. One friend recalled her saying, "I just want to figure out who I am, away from all the rules." To her parents, that revelation hit like a lightning strike. Goldia couldn't understand. Phoenix didn't lie. She didn't need to. But Lawrence began to wonder if his daughter had been hiding something darker. Maybe someone she feared. Police also discovered text messages to a man whose name wasn't in the family's contact list. The tone was tense. One message read, "You don't understand. I can't talk right now." Another, hours before she vanished. "If I disappear, it's not because I wanted to." That single line haunted the detectives. Was it just a figure of speech, or a warning? For the Coldons, it changed everything. They started questioning everyone who knew Phoenix outside the family circle. Church members, classmates, co-workers. Each offered a slightly different version of who she was. The picture of a perfect daughter was fading, replaced by the outline of a young woman torn between two worlds, the one her parents built for her, and the one she secretly tried to build for herself. And somewhere between those two worlds, Phoenix Coldon disappeared. The discovery of Phoenix's secret apartment changed everything. It was a small, one-bedroom unit tucked behind an old brick building in East St. Louis, the kind of place most people drove past without noticing. Inside, police found clothes, notebooks, a half-empty box of cereal, and mail addressed to Phoenix Reeves. That was her middle name, one she rarely used. Neighbors told investigators they'd seen her there, off and on for months. She often came late at night, sometimes alone, sometimes with a man. That man, they later learned was a boyfriend her parents didn't know existed. His name was withheld from public reports, but friends described him as quiet, older, and a little controlling. When detectives tracked him down, he admitted they'd been in a relationship, but claimed it had ended weeks before Phoenix vanished. She was trying to get her life together, he said. She wanted to move out, get her own place, maybe go back to school. But then his tone shifted. She'd been paranoid lately, kept saying somebody was watching her. Those words froze investigators. Who was she talking about? He didn't know, or claimed not to. Friends later told police Phoenix had started carrying pepper spray and avoided driving home the same way twice. One friend remembered her saying, "If something happens to me, just tell my mom I love her." At the time, it sounded like drama. Now, it felt like a warning. Police pressed the boyfriend harder. Where was he on the day she disappeared? He said he was at home, alone. No one could confirm it. The apartment, the alias, the older boyfriend, they all painted a picture of a young woman caught between fear and independence, trying to escape something she couldn't name. And yet, even with all these discoveries, one question remained unanswered. If Phoenix truly feared for her safety, why did no one protect her before it was too late? From the moment Phoenix backed her black Chevy Blazer out of the driveway that Sunday afternoon, to the time her car was found idling miles away, exactly 45 minutes had passed. 45 minutes that no one could account for. No camera footage, no witnesses, no phone activity, just silence, and then disappearance. Detectives reconstructed her route as best they could. She likely took Interstate 270, crossed the bridge into East St. Louis, and turned onto a side road near Route 70. But after that, the trail went cold. Not one gas station camera caught her face. Not one license plate reader recorded her car leaving the area. It was as if Phoenix had driven straight into a shadow. What made it stranger was how ordinary that afternoon had been. The weather was clear, traffic was normal. If something went wrong, someone should have seen it. A stalled car, a man approaching, a scream, anything. But no one did. Investigators reviewed surveillance tapes from nearby parking lots and businesses. They found dozens of cars passing through that road. None matched her Blazer. The few seconds between 3 and 3:45 p.m. became a black hole in time. Detective Brooks later said, "We deal with missing persons all the time. But with Phoenix, it's like she just slipped through a crack in reality." The lack of evidence fueled speculation. Some believed she'd pulled over to meet someone, maybe the man she feared. Others thought she'd been followed, forced off the road. A few even whispered about trafficking rings that used that stretch of highway to move victims across state lines. But none of it could be proven. Her car was found perfectly parked, keys still in the ignition, engine humming softly, like it was waiting for her to return. Only she never did. 45 minutes. That's all it took for a bright, determined young woman to vanish from the face of the earth and leave behind a silence that still hasn't been broken. When Lawrence Coldon stood before his daughter's Chevy Blazer, the world seemed to stop. It was parked inside the impound lot, ordinary at first glance, but something about it felt wrong. The driver's door was cracked open, the key was still in the ignition. The gas gauge hovered near empty, and when he reached inside to turn the key, the radio came alive. A soft gospel song filled the silence, one Phoenix used to sing along to in church. The melody trembled through the speakers, echoing in the cold air, like a voice trapped between worlds. Goldia stepped closer and whispered, "It's like she just stepped out and never came back." Inside the car, everything was neat. Too neat. Her purse sat on the passenger seat, zipped shut. Her driver's license, debit card, glasses, untouched. Her phone was in the cup holder, battery dead, as if it had been left charging. No fingerprints other than hers. No sign of a struggle. The vehicle had been towed from a rough area, a place known for abandoned cars and occasional crimes, but nothing about this scene screamed panic or theft. Detectives examined the dirt beneath the car. No skid marks, no footprints leading away. It was as if Phoenix had simply opened the door and dissolved into thin air. For Lawrence and Goldia, it felt like walking into a frozen moment. Time captured in the last breath their daughter took before vanishing. Lawrence later said, "It was like the car was waiting for her. Just waiting." When the couple left the impound lot that night, Goldia kept looking back at the SUV as if expecting Phoenix to appear beside it. But the only sound was the hum of the radio fading into static. In that moment, the Coldens knew this wasn't a runaway. Something had happened to their daughter. Something that had taken her from that running car and left behind nothing but silence, music, and questions that would never stop echoing. In the months that followed, Phoenix's name began to appear everywhere, on flyers, local newscasts, and late-night radio shows dedicated to missing persons. And with the attention came the rumors. A truck driver called police claiming he'd seen a young woman matching Phoenix's description at a gas station outside Las Vegas. Another tip came from Chicago. A bartender swore a girl named Phoenix had walked in one night, nervous, asking if anyone could lend her a phone. Then a family from Texas said they saw her at a bus stop, looking lost, traveling alone. Each time the phone rang, Goldia's heart raced. She'd grab a notepad, write down the details, and ask the same trembling question. Are you sure it was her? But every lead ended the same way. Uncertainty, confusion, silence. Then, a darker rumor spread online that Phoenix had been taken, pulled into a human trafficking ring operating along the interstate. The location of her car, the lack of struggle, the silence. It all fit the pattern. Reporters reached out to retired detectives who specialized in trafficking cases. One said, if someone grabbed her, they knew what they were doing. Fast, quiet, invisible. The theory terrified her parents, and yet it gave them hope. Because if she'd been taken, maybe she was still alive. The Coldens began working with private investigators, chasing down tips across states. They visited shelters, women's centers, and churches, showing Phoenix's photo to anyone who would look. Some people said yes, others no, but none of it led to her. Every time a new sighting surfaced, hope flickered again, only to burn out just as quickly. One night, after another false lead from Nevada, Goldia whispered to her husband, "Maybe God keeps letting us see glimpses, so we don't give up." And so, they didn't. They kept searching, even when the world stopped paying attention, even when the trail had long gone cold. Faith was all the Coldens had left. When the phone stopped ringing and the reporters moved on, Goldia and Lawrence turned their living room into a small chapel of hope. A single candle burned each night by the window, beside a framed picture of Phoenix, smiling in her college graduation robe. Every evening before bed, Goldia whispered the same words, "Lord, bring her home. Keep her safe. Wherever she is." They never stopped setting a place for her at the dinner table. Her room remained untouched, the bed neatly made, perfume still on the dresser, Bible open on the nightstand. Goldia couldn't bring herself to move anything. "If she walks through that door," she said, "I want it to feel like she never left." On Sundays, they stood before their congregation and asked for prayers. Sometimes, strangers would approach after service, mothers who'd lost children, fathers who'd buried their faith, and tell them, "We're praying for your girl." Each word felt like oxygen. Lawrence threw himself into the search. He spent weekends driving highways, knocking on doors, talking to anyone who might have seen something. Gas receipts piled up. Flyers covered his dashboard. One night, after weeks on the road, he broke down in his truck and said out loud, "Phoenix, give me a sign, anything." There was only the sound of rain on the windshield, but the Coldens refused to let despair win. They formed the Phoenix Coldon Foundation, visiting churches and schools, warning parents about the dangers young women face. Goldia would stand before the crowd, holding her daughter's photo, and say, "If I stop looking for her, who will?" Her faith became both her armor and her wound, the thing that kept her going and the reason she couldn't rest. In that house in Spanish Lake, the candle by the window still burned every night, a flicker of light against the darkness, a promise that hope, no matter how fragile, would never go out. In 2017, 6 years after Phoenix Coldon vanished, her story reached television audiences across the nation. The show Find Our Missing aired a full episode on her case, giving voice to the family that had refused to give up. For the first time in years, her name trended online. New tips poured in, phone calls, emails, messages from strangers who swore they'd seen her. One woman from Illinois claimed Phoenix had been living under a different name, working at a hair salon. Another said she'd seen her at a gas station, talking to 2 men near a white pickup truck the day she disappeared. Detectives checked every lead, but nothing matched. No surveillance footage, no credit card trail, no proof. Every glimmer of hope ended the same way, with silence. Then came a breakthrough that wasn't. A private investigator working with the family received an anonymous message online. "She's alive. She doesn't want to be found." The sender never replied again. Was it the truth, or just another cruel game? For a brief moment, hope flared again in the Coldon home. Goldia admitted, "I prayed that maybe she had started over, somewhere safe, far from whatever scared her." But as the weeks passed and no evidence surfaced, the truth settled back in like dust, heavy and still. Police reopened parts of the case, re-interviewing friends and former classmates. They found inconsistencies. People who suddenly remembered different timelines, who hesitated when asked simple questions. Still, nothing concrete. No crime scene, no confession, no body. Investigators compared it to chasing smoke. One said, "We're looking for a person who may not want to be found, or may not be alive to explain why." By the end of the year, the media attention faded again. The phones stopped ringing. The tips slowed to nothing. And once more the Coldon family was left standing alone, staring at that same empty driveway, waiting for a sound that never came. After years of searching, 3 theories remained, none of them offering peace. The first, she chose to disappear. Some investigators believed Phoenix had planned her own vanishing act. She was living a double life. One foot in her parents' sheltered world, the other in a life of independence and secrets. Maybe she felt trapped, torn between who she was and who she wanted to be. Maybe the pressure finally broke her. She had cash, her car, her ID. She could have driven away, changed her name, and started over. It had happened before. People walking away to escape expectations, families, faith. But to her parents, that theory was impossible. Goldia would say, if she wanted freedom, she could have just said so. She didn't need to vanish into nothing. The second theory, she was abducted. The area where her SUV was found, East St. Louis, was known for crime, drugs, and trafficking networks. It wouldn't take long for someone to notice a young woman alone in a running car. If she'd pulled over to meet someone or stopped to help a stranger, she could have been taken in seconds. No struggle, no noise, just gone. To this day, many detectives quietly lean toward this explanation. And then, the darkest theory. She was murdered. Some believe Phoenix crossed paths with someone she trusted, maybe that boyfriend, maybe a new acquaintance, and paid the price for it. A fight, a betrayal, a moment of rage. The car left as a distraction, the body hidden, never found. Without evidence, though, it's only speculation, a shadow of a truth no one can touch. Each theory has holes, contradictions, unanswered questions. None can explain everything. And for the Coldons, the not knowing, became its own kind of torment. Because no matter which theory you believe, one thing remains certain. Phoenix Coldon didn't just disappear from a road in Missouri. She vanished from a world that hasn't stopped asking where she went, or why no one saw her leave. More than a decade has passed since Phoenix Coldon vanished on that cold December afternoon. Her photo still hangs above the fireplace in her parents' home. The same smile, the same eyes, frozen in time. Every year, on the anniversary of her disappearance, the Coldons gather with neighbors and friends at a small park in Spanish Lake. They light candles, release white balloons into the night sky, and whisper her name as the lights drift upward. To this day, there is no trace, no body, no confirmed sighting, just the unanswered question that refuses to fade. What happened to Phoenix? Her room remains exactly as it was. A Bible rests open on her nightstand, its pages turned to Psalm 27. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Goldia says she reads that verse every morning. It's her way of fighting back against the silence. Some nights, Lawrence still drives the highways where he once searched for her. He says he can't stop. Every time I see a young woman walking alone, he told a reporter, I slow down, just in case it's her. The house at Spanish Lake glows with a single candle by the window, burning year after year, a symbol of a faith that never died. For the Coldons, Phoenix isn't gone. She's simply waiting to be found. And maybe, somewhere out there, her story isn't over yet. Maybe one day, the phone will ring, and a voice will finally say the words they've been waiting to hear. Until then, her case remains open. Her name remains spoken. And her story remains one of the most haunting disappearances in America's heartland. Because sometimes, the scariest mysteries aren't in the dark. They're in the silence that follows. If you want more true stories of people who vanished without a trace, the ones America still can't forget, make sure to like this video, leave a comment for Phoenix's family, and subscribe to Vanished in America Story, because every view, every share, and every voice keeps her story alive until the truth is finally found.